to the Coinscore podcast. My name is Glennon. Today we have McKie on the show with us. He's visiting from the West Coast, San Francisco. Stephen, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm McKie, and I guess since there's video on this, does that still make it a podcast? Or is it a video cast? Where's the line? But yeah, so my name's McKie. I also have a podcast myself called Block Channel, which is like more focused on like developer education, entrepreneur education, crypto economics. There's also like an affiliated like publication that goes along with that. With that, I have a hybrid crypto hedge fund that I have with 3 other partners called Amentum. And then I also advise 6 companies in the crypto space. So I've been around for about 5 years. I've got quite a long like laundry list, like resume of like projects that I've worked on from various different capacities, from growth product development, UI UX design, business strategy, partnerships. So as crypto like continues to grow, I've kind of like taken all those skills and kind of feel like where can I best use my amalgamation of skills to provide like the most like economic output for the space. So as the space continues to grow and mature, how can I, one, continue to learn myself personally, so I can stay abreast of all the new things that are going on in the space, but like also like given my skill set, where would that help the space grow fastest? So that's why I advise so many companies. That's why I have like a podcast and a publication, and that's also why I started the fund. So it's just like being able to figure out, the best silos that will build out the space more quickly. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so we can jump right into your hybrid crypto fund.
Yeah.
There are a lot of, venture capital hedge funds popping up everywhere. If someone gets lucky on Ethereum, they have a hedge fund. Do you want to speak more into kind of your methodology and any, thesis you guys have? Any recommendations for anyone else out there possibly considering wanting to get into the fund space?
Yeah, okay, let me see. Where's the first place to kind of tackle this topic? Okay, first, let's talk about outside individuals who are not what I like to call like quote unquote crypto natives. Mm-hmm. So, like hedge funds, venture funds, right? They have serve 2 different sort of functions, right? So hedge funds are basically trying to bet against the market that you can perform better than the other individual and bring about returns, right? Venture is more mid to long term. What do we need now? It's not necessarily liquid historically, and where is technology going? We're going to put our money there, and over X amount of time we're going to make a return. Mm-hmm. And the great thing about cryptocurrencies is it sort of combines the 2, right? There's a 24/7 speculative market, but then there's also a very deep need for core infrastructure that will make the space grow more quickly, right? Gain more adoption. So when you have myself, Amentum, when you have a hybrid crypto fund, what that necessarily means is you're usually doing 2 things, 2 functions. One, public crypto market investing, so Bitcoin, Ethereum, Zcash, those sort of things. What is your portfolio? What does the rebalancing look like? What's your holding strategy? What's your thesis behind holding this basket? And can you outperform the market and rebalance accordingly to generate the best alpha, right? So whether that is just holding Bitcoin and making X percentage in a year, or they were just should that allocation be more in Ethereum? Is that going to be able to outperform it? Where is the space going? What is the prevailing sentiment around the core technologies themselves, their scalability, their sustainability, the security of that asset? You have to have all these things in consideration. And so you have some crypto fund managers, which are your early 20-somethings that have come into the space. They put some money in the ether maybe a year and a half ago, maybe some other asset. They had a large sum of capital, put it in there, they did well. It's just saying, in the past year, it's very difficult for you to not do well, right?
That's true. Yeah, everyone's kind of winning. You got a question okay.
Yeah, and everyone will say that in a bull market, everyone appears to be a genius. Mm-hmm. But in crypto, this is a very special case, a very pivotal moment in financial market history. So there are, when you're investing in crypto, it's far more complex than let me look at this data set, look at this metrics, look at this team, and make a determination on where this project's going to go, and we're going to put our money there. You can do that, and you can invest in a good team that's going to be able to deliver something. But because inherently how technically complex these systems are and how unfinished a lot of the scalability and like more modular portions of these systems are. It's important that you have to be more, you can't just be a technologist, right? You also have to be an engineer. You also have to understand finance. You also have to understand economics. You also have to understand, kind of like the game theoretic, mechanism design that goes into these and like what makes them sustainable, right? Like it's like, do I have a simple medium exchange token that just like when I make a purchase point A to point B, is there a long-term value in that, right? No. It's like the question is like, how do we create a sustainable, incentivized ecosystem where players can join these like human-centric trustless networks and provide a long-term sustainable value. And not only for potential investors who are making a return on your capital investment, but also on the overall draw of what good and or social impact services this provide, what advantages and inefficiencies does this improve upon over the legacy version of it, and then also of these pieces, they're kind of like puzzle pieces. Which one of these can we combine to create something very new? So we're kind of my team specifically. We are very multidisciplinary. Civil engineers, like low-level protocol engineers, computer scientists, electrical engineers, project managers. So like it takes a multitude of different skills in order to do this right. It's not just we've got capital, we're going to meet teams, we're going to get a 20% discount on this ICO, and we're going to kill it. We're going to make like 100% or something like that, right? I want to be a part of the core infrastructure of the space that's going to really set things apart, or is really going to differentiate and is going to get people to think about, to open their imagination and think like, what more can we do with this?
Like a different system.
Exactly. Yeah. So, because it's very evolutionary, and so if you can be a part of sort of like on that cusp, that bleeding edge is like what is coming next. That is where you're going to generate the highest returns. But on top of that, you have to ensure that those projects are, potentially like one secure from like a programmatic standpoint, and then also as far as the project itself, the developers, do they know what they're doing? Is this a project or a system that is likely to lose people money? Yada yada, those things. But then you also have concerns about the sustainability of that ecosystem. Is the community behind it? Are there developers behind it? Does it make technological sense to where it can actually last long term? Because if you're trying to produce a decent IRR for your company, right, and continue to make returns and to impress your investors, you want to make sure that the project is sustainable. And then there's also the interoperability component, right? So again, back to the puzzle pieces. If the project isn't easily extendable, right, cannot be loosely coupled, combined with other different things to create something more novel, it probably won't kind of stand the test of time, right? As the space evolves, you want to leave your project more open and flexible in order to tie into other different systems and services, which is very important to tie back into the sustainability aspect, right? So if I'm trying to create sustainable returns, if I can invest in assets, infrastructure, companies, people, teams that are focused on interoperability, then the sustainability factor is more hardened and ensured, right? But then also the last key component of everything is diversity. And when I say diversity, I don't mean people of color, women, other genders, etc. I mean that's only one core component, right? You want diversity of mind, diversity of skill set, again, back to the multidisciplinary aspect, the diversity of the projects and stuff that you invest in, the assets themselves, kind of their directions, their visions, because you want to bring more people to the table, and we also want to help adoption, but we also want to make sure that all the people with the great, with really great ideas get the attention and the capital they deserve to actually create those things. So it's this constant, moving project of keeping your eyes open and knowing what's new and where things are going, but also being able to recognize talent for what it is, and being able to aid that talent and assist them in getting to where they need to go.
Gotcha. So you mentioned kind of always staying on the forefront. Can you speak to how you do it? Is it Twitter? Is it your own channels? Where you reach out? And then going off of that, where do you see the industry going? In the next year, what does 2018 hold?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess your first part of your question, what is our signal? What do we look at, right? Okay. So touched on in that beginning. First part is more the prevailing market sentiment, right? So for in the very beginning, for instance, with Bitcoin, it was wholly libertarian, we're coming for the banks, give power back to the people, yada yada yada. And over time, that ethos, that narrative has evolved, We went from like, let's brutally like bash these banks like with a club down and like give people more financial freedom to now like, how do we build from the bottom up to help, you know, emerging markets, other individuals that wouldn't necessarily have access to these systems, so we can grow this space faster, right? You can only scale and grow and get so much adoption by like trying to like be better than banks, right? There came a point in the history of crypto, sometime after like 2015, 2016 or so, after like Ethereum and those other sorts of projects started to like proliferate, that hey, we can gain a lot of developer mindshare really fast, and we can build a bunch of really cool stuff. And the important part is being able to follow that sentiment, follow that drive, know where the space is going, know what the space needs, and allocating your funds accordingly. You know, with that, you know, there's other key components to looking at, you know, aside from just sentiment, and that is like one, the community itself, the community's sentiment. Like, is this a project that has a pre-existing community? You know, say if I was trying to build a platform built on top of like content monetization or something like that, right? Is there a niche there? Is there a need? Is that a pre-existing market? If I was to tokenize something or some component or something like that, like, is it actually helping people? And if I'm talking about that project and getting interested in it, and it's like being disseminated, what is the public opinion on that? Do people find use about it? Do they get excited talking about it, right? That's important, because that shows that there is like fertile room for growth in that sector. The other part of that is like the developer ecosystems themselves, right? Like there's this, oh, you have this niche project and you have this really cool idea and and all the pieces make sense, but do the developers care?
Is there anyone there to work on it?
Yeah, is there anyone there to work on it? Is it cool? Does it excite people? Is there anything interesting and novel about the technology? Is it what languages is it written in? Like, what does the GitHub activity look like for other projects that are similar and or could be like comparative and or interoperable, right? So when you go to like, hey, I want to scale Ethereum, I want to build some dApps and stuff like that, and you look at the spirit, like, what do we need? Like, oh snap, we need decentralized storage. Like developers complain that they're writing dApps and they need places to like, you know, store their assets and their data for people to interact with the contract. From a developer standpoint, like, that's a need. I need that. I want to help that one. And so probably the last piece would probably be like the market data. Right? So you have people like Chris Berniski, one of my friends and partners, Alex Evans, who are like kind of looking at the different valuation models for crypto, right? Kind of the theory behind that, the crypto economics, like transactional volume, you know, number of actual users, like potential users for your platform. You know, looking at market data and being able to figure out like, is there space for this? Does it make sense? Like, does it have room for growth? Right, like you can't like looking at the community and looking at developers. Yeah, those are metrics and data, but you also want to look at, you know, how is the other market performing as opposed to like what it is you're envisioning and building, and that's important. And I think if you can touch on each of all those spaces, like that is the right way to invest into crypto. You can have many different types of thesis and strategies, but you still need to focus on those 4 components to be able to actually determine, is this a good project for us?
Gotcha, yeah. Something we did in Coinscore, which I think has been very useful, is segmenting the industries. Yeah. And we can see that the platforms and protocols that support smart contracts and dApps, those are the ones that usually have the best returns, which makes sense, you know. One of the things, also kind of going off of those stats you're talking about, I can think of Metcalfe's law, think of how that network effect would work. And it's interesting, I think a discount on that is the languages supported. Like Ethereum's you know, very awesome, and I think if it survives, then Solidity is this very high-class language. But if it fails, that could be the reason, you know, because they made this very exclusive language. Like I said, the interoperability, it's very hard to do. You know, when most things are just going to do JavaScript and compile it. That's awesome. So now jumping into some of the projects that you advise, you got some interesting projects. We like them. Any you'd like to speak about specifically?
Yeah, so I can guess, okay, so I'm currently advising 6 projects, and I'll just talk a little bit about why I chose each, just very, like, briefly. So the very first project that I started as an advisor on, which was maybe like March or April of like last year, was a project called Cent. And what Cent's original vision was that they wanted to be more like a Quora, but for crypto. So it was built atop of Ethereum. These 2 gentlemen, Max and Cameron, And basically what they envisioned was a platform where like your contributions, as far as like, content, curation, etc., each of those components would be incentivized. So whether I'm just a normal member and I like to just like, troll and just like hang out like on different like subsections and like read what people are talking about, learn what people are talking about, I can be a curator on the platform, and basically like dictate like which questions and answers, which projects and discussions are good, right? And there's some sort of like a incentivization there, and users can earn ETH particularly for like that action. But then on the same side, it's like looking forward at the idea of like money as an incentive for engagement in the first place, right? It's a very interesting thing. Whereas like we spend all day on like Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, and all that sort of stuff, right? But like, what if the amount of time that you spend there also correlated to some sort of like return or some sort of like financial incentive? So if I can get paid to curate, upvote, downvote things, if I can get paid to leave like highly useful like content and comments where I'm like answering people's questions and other people gain value from that, I should get money from that. And then like the individuals themselves who want to like contribute to their like how in what novel and creative ways can we like add contributions to the social network, this ecosystem, whether that's like threads, bounties, asking questions, etc. Like how does that evolve over time, and how do you reward people? So that's a project that I'm very excited about. They're working on something called like the Cent token, and they've been working on kind of the token mechanism design behind that, which is like how do you really incentivize like proof of usage, right? It's not what it's called, but it's just like of your usage on the platform, what are the best ways to earn money on top of that?
Gotcha.
And then also, let's see, next project would be called Spank Chain, which is an adult like web streaming platform, but also like a payment processor. Think of it as like a AWS for like adult entertainment, right? So like if you want to launch a content site, if you want to launch a campsite, right, you should be able to have like all the components. So like one, receive payments, and crypto, it's one of the key components is like micropayments. So being able to send tiny sums of funds like where it is needed. So whether that's rewarding a CAM model, whether that's like purchasing a piece of like pornographic content, something like that, right? So like the adult industry and kind of the thesis behind that is it's always been a driver for new technology, whether that is like camcorders and cameras back in the day to VR.
High-speed internet.
Exactly, high-speed internet. There's only so much you can do on 56K dial-up modem.
Yeah.
And then also like VHS Betamax, right? Ultimately, VHS beat out Betamax because it was adopted by the adult industry first, right? Because they're like, so like human biology is like really funny. That no matter how smart and how cool of an idea it is, especially from a technology sphere, if you involve human sexuality into the equation, we deal with financial incentives, but that's a biological incentive that you can't ignore, right? So if you're actually going to create a space, an ecosystem, a new internet, it needs porn, which is funny to say, because it's such a taboo topic. But this space is very heady, very like self-aware, and to deny that fact would be like denying common sense. So Spank Chain is a very cool project, started by a friend of mine, Amentum, who's previously at Consensus. So that's really cool. They're working on some really neat tech there in regards to like generalized state channels, which ultimately will add additional infrastructure to the space and additional componentization that will aid in scalability. The next project was working on is called Connext. So Connext API. So essentially, it started by my friend Arjun Bhuptani, who was basically working on an AML KYC like identity component, to where if I want to tie into like exchanges and I want to make a purchase of say another ERC20 token, how do I do that legally with like a credit card and also adhere to compliance in the traditional legacy financial? But how do I make sure people aren't like stealing credit card numbers and just buying random tokens on the internet, right? So basically what he's working on is kind of like an enclave where it's like identity, where a mixture of zero knowledge range proofs to be able to like share data and credentials with an organization or like a bank, but then also being able to like still make purchases. So like that could there's so many different projects that are going to come online over the next few months, year, where people are going to need to be able to, from a UX standpoint, quickly buy that asset or a token in order to interact with that system. And so like lowering those barriers is very important. And on all the projects that I work with and I advise, a good bit of them have some token component. So if there's a way to increase the velocity of like the purchase and the utilization of that asset, the faster the space can evolve, right? So that's why I'm excited behind that project. Another is called Zastron.com. And essentially it's kind of like the Udemy Code Academy, but for Ethereum like Solidity development. So that was started by my friend Mahesh Murthy. And essentially what that is, he goes through and takes like very like novel approaches. Like say you were wanted to build like a decentralized eBay, or you wanted to build like a decentralized voting system. He will walk you through the different components in the Ethereum ecosystem that allow you to construct that, and walk you through step by step on how to like make that as a developer. So basically it's twofold. You're learning Solidity development and things like that in like whatever language, right, for whatever the project is, but you're also learning about the ethos and the narrative of the space. It's like why is it's like what is important about a decentralized eBay? What is important about a decentralized voting?
Why does it even matter?
Yeah, why does it even matter? So that's like one of the first things you'll struggle with, like coming into Ethereum. You're like, okay, I'm learning Solidity, I'm learning all this other sort of stuff. You're running these roadblocks as far as scalability and or being able to like write an application slightly differently than you normally would in a normal web app. And you probably end up asking yourself a question like, why is it so difficult? And the real reason is because like, we're really trying to create something different, and you don't want to make sacrifices on decentralization and security, or decentralization, security, and what the last piece of this trilemma is. I forget off the top of my head. And so, you want to ensure that you're able to deliver that, and in order to do that, you have to have developers that understand what they're building. Another project I'm advising, Cypher Browser, which is really exciting, which is kind of like if you've ever heard of MetaMask, where it's like, you can like interact with like Web3 websites by having like ETH in a browser. Like, think of it like Google Chrome plugin. Like that's powerful because it makes any other traditional web browser become like an active component in the Ethereum dApp ecosystem. Now, what was lacking for the longest time with projects like MetaMask was there was no like real mobile component. And if we all know that like, mobile is huge, mobile, and like it's a big deal, and the complexity behind developing like Ethereum like clients, different like and having that on mobile is very hard. But the gentleman Pete Kim, who started this project, he was very excited. He was very adamant that these sort of services could be put on mobile, and it should be soon. And he was able to deliver on that. So you have like a dApp browser. Go in there. You can interact with all Web3 apps. It's also like an Ethereum wallet, and you can keep all your different custom flavored tokens, ERC20 tokens on it. And it uses like BIP39 like recovery seeds. You can generate a wallet on Cypher browser and then move it to MetaMask, and have it on there, move your funds around, etc. And it's just a way to like again lower barriers to entry. A lot of people just use their cell phones nowadays. So they're like, okay, like what app do I download to do this? Like, how do I Ethereum with my phone? Well, you previously like really couldn't, and then now Cypher Browser allows you to be able to do that. So it's just like core components and infrastructure of the space, which again, interoperably, will allow us to like grow faster, but are also make the space more sustainable. And I believe that was all the projects. Let's see, we got Cent, Cypher, Connects, Spank, and CryptoPets. Crypto would be like the last one. So CryptoPets is a project which uses like ERC 721, like non-fungible tokens, or whatever that standard will grow at is over time, to essentially like create a marketplace for you able to buy like digital animals and like kind of like collectibles from this marketplace, but also on the same time you'll be able to do other novel things like either like battle with them, take them with you on mobile on your mobile device, interact with other players in the game. So CryptoKitties and those sort of projects that came out were like the first projects were like very eye-opening to a lot of people, where it was like, oh, that's it, that's what we needed in space. We needed digital cats. And so it's just like you needed something cute and exciting and novel to like capture the attention of not only consumers but also developers. Like for the longest time, everyone was building things on like ERC20 tokens. They're fungible. We're gonna raise money on this token. It's gonna be some component in this ecosystem, and da 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 da. And now there's this new option with non-fungible tokens, where it's like, cool, we can create all these other novel use cases and projects and applications, but they're not skewed towards securities. There's less potential for legal repercussions, but also it's like it feeds off the human innate to like want to collect, right? Like you have like whether it's like back in the day when you were collecting Pokemon, or like baseball cards or Pokemon cards or anything like that. Like there's something exciting about collecting and have something that someone else does not have, right? And then when it the definition of fungible, one-to-one things are the same. It's exchange. It's always going to be the same. But to have like non-fungibility means that I can have this asset where maybe to me at the time when I got it, it was worth like $200 or $300. But over time, as the ecosystem grows, there's more speculative value that builds in that marketplace or in that ecosystem. Maybe I can like either sell that for some sort of return, or I can trade that for other assets and stuff in the future that are of greater value. And it's just a matter of like taking current legacy things that work and translating that to its like digital componentization that helps aid in adoption. And I think that's a big way in order to get there.
Yeah, I think that's big too. I think our digital world is about to collide our physical world very intensely here pretty soon. I think blockchain is one of the ways where that's going to happen. So you know what? I think this has been great. Again, Stephen, thanks so much for coming on the Coinscore podcast.